No jesters are allowed if they ever hurt the king's feelings. Huh? Would a king decide that it is no longer allowed to say the king is bad? No king would do such a thing. He is like... All right, now that we addressed this up and down, time to talk about the good things that are happening in the world, the No King's protest. Okay? No King's protest.
This is breaking news.
The No King's protest in Manhattan is already underway. This began around
Fucking huge, brother. It's awesome.
at 11 o'clock this
Hold on, I
morning.
gotta pee.
We are looking down at Times Square, the convergence of 7th Avenue and Broadway. We can see large crowds that have been out here for some time now, already on the move, making their way down 7th Avenue. Currently, the crowd stretches from the north end of Times Square, 50th Street, both Broadway and 7th Avenue, beginning at 50th Street. Here from the middle of Times Square down 7th Avenue, the lead of the march is already down into the 30s near 34th Street. There is some spillover onto some of the side streets as well. Currently, the police are shutting down traffic to try to alleviate the issues in the area for those cross streets trying to get across 7th Avenue. In the meantime, if you are traveling around Manhattan, avoid the entire stretch of Midtown from about 50th Street down to 14th Street. Jim Smith, CBS News, New York.
What do you want? Justice! What do you want? Justice!
From coast to coast, millions of Americans took to autumnal streets today with signs, banners and colourful costumes. Towns and cities, big and small, hosting over 2,500 protest events. Their message, this is a republic ruled by a constitution, not a king.
We got to point out to the country that people are paying attention, that 49.9% of the vote is not a mandate to rip apart the Constitution.
I'm against the overreach of power. I believe in 3 branches of government. There's just been almost too many things to list.
I think that the state of the world that we are in right now is really horrible. I want my rights back. I'm off. I need Trump out of office. And yeah, no kings. That.
10 months after being sworn in for the second time, organisers accused Donald Trump of trying to warp the role of president into that of a monarch, bypassing Congress to rule by executive order, breaking norms and weaponising the justice system against his perceived enemies and in favour of his supporters. Former Congressman George Santos, the latest of whom, to have his 7-year jail sentence for wire fraud and identity theft commuted overnight. Just this week at the White House, which he continues to redecorate in his own gilded style, with plans for a $250 million ballroom, Trump unveiled his Napoleon.
Bro, even YouTubers who break phones for a living, living out there. Oh yeah, this guy, I think used to be kind of like a right wing, center right normie, and Trump bricked him, dude. I've been seeing him post more and more. I've been seeing him post more and more about his like anger and resentment towards this administration, and it has only expanded in the last I think he was like kind of a libertarian guy, and he is pissed off at Trump. Even the Palestine stuff also bricked him. He runs a wheelchair company for his wife. The ADA stuff was a big deal. Yeah. This is why I always have confidence that people can change. This is important. You have to understand. Sometimes we say, oh, Republicans only realize that something is up when it impacts them directly. But it doesn't matter, okay? It doesn't fucking matter. This is what I am firmly committed to. This is what I believe. The theory of change revolves around this. The theory of change that I embody, the theory of change that I push for, revolves around this. One day, no matter how much of a naysayer someone could be, one day there will be an issue, and they will realize that they will feel alone on a particular matter. They will feel like no one else cares about this thing that they care about because it impacts them directly. And we will be there because we've always been there. We've always been fighting for these things. And that's when those people's eyes will open up to the reality that maybe the negative polarization and the false framing and the false associations that they have with the left was built around the social learning that they went through, the environment that they grew up in, and that maybe they were wrong. There are many of you in this community who have also gone through that transformation as well. And I think it's really inappropriate to try to shut that off for others. But yes, I will always celebrate people that go through this transformation because it's a wonderful thing. And Jerry rigs everything I have personally seen throughout this past year, especially, go through that transformation these past 2 years. Some people can't put themselves in other people's shoes, and I think it's just a human thing, but once people feel it, they understand it and grow. Yes, you're right, people can change, but I have a bit of a justice narrative, so I see these dickhead hogs seeing their own stupidity, yet I've been a lefty since university. I have a real hard time forgiving hateful rhetoric and victim blaming and ignorance. It doesn't matter. That's your own personal hang-up, and you have to remove that kind of attitude. They didn't change, the discourse did? No. 501 sucks ass, though. They don't know how to manage protests at all, and they're total bootlickers. No Kings is cucked. Stop. Don't do that. I have said over and over again, the last time the No Kings protest took place, amidst anti-ICE protests that were being put together by PSL, for example, that ended up becoming having much larger police presence and police enforcement than the 501 No Kings protests. What did I tell you back then? This is not a bad thing, okay? So many of these people recognize exactly what's going on and they're frustrated by it for 1, 2, 3, or a million different reasons, okay? But what matters is they know what the f is up. They recognize what's going on and they're frustrated by it and they want to protest against it, okay? I'm not going to ever poo-poo a person for taking it to the goddamn streets at a time when our voices have to be heard. Especially because people had these exact same opinions and these exact same criticisms about Bernie Sanders and AOC's no oligarchy rallies as well. People had these exact same kinds of opinions and criticisms about the No Kings protests. But ultimately, it is up to us to be there, especially considering that when you go and attend things like this, when you go and attend these sorts of protests, 2 things happen. Number 1, you feel emboldened. You get to see solidarity in action, and it's a beautiful feeling, okay? It is the anti-black pill. It is the maximum touching grass that you can do. That's number 1. And number 2, you recognize that regardless of the intention of the protest organizers themselves, regardless of even Bernie Sanders and AOC's perspectives on certain issues, the people that are attending those protests actually are on your side. And sometimes, or in many instances, especially given the way that liberals are operating right now and the way that they're communicating their discontent right now, they are far more radical than the way that the No Kings protest organizing committee has presented themselves as. Okay, that's it. It's one thing to dive into history books and fantasize about a time when you could have 300,000 socialists, card-carrying party members, trade unionists, communists come together and flood the streets. But unfortunately, you have to look at the situation that is in front of you. Fantasizing about activism of that sort is not going to make it happen. You have to make it happen. That's it. All this kind of like, oh, the Bernie rallies don't do shit. All that does is just make you feel better about yourself. It's the leftist version of what we saw early on when some chirpers, some liberals were like, we're going to sit ourselves out of this one. We're tired. You know, we voted for Kamala. We did our job. And the left didn't. So we're not going to participate in these ICE protests. When people were saying that, That was actually, they were saying that because they wanted to feel moral about their inaction. What you're doing right now is the left version of that. Okay? When you sit there and you go, all these Barbaras and Deborahs, they're out there, but like, this is not going to do anything, right? When you say stuff like that, you're not saying that because there is like reasonable critique against the No Kings protest organizers or anything like that, which I understand. I myself have actually been pretty vocal about things that I think are totally inappropriate as far as like organizing goes, as far as like experiencing it. Expressing any sort of discontent goes, like RSVP lists and things of that nature are not best practices at all. Having said that, you'll never catch me saying this is bullshit, this is useless, this is silly, this is stupid, okay? It matters. It matters when you got millions of people on the streets, man. It matters. Are you kidding me? Like, look at this.
Every day, in particular, the nonprofit and independent media on the streets every day.
Like, look at this shit.
Including Block Club Chicago, Unraveled Press, and the Tribe, to say in particular
the people are united, they're activated, they're angry. It is important for the existing party apparatus to utilize that anger and to redirect it into a productive, into something more productive. Okay? And if the party won't do it, and it doesn't seem like it will, we will do it. So instead of sitting around and complaining and being like, oh, it's just liberals, go out there, participate, organize. That's it. This kind of stuff, this kind of change doesn't happen overnight, doesn't happen magically. It takes many, many years. It takes a tremendous amount of effort. And you never know how far you can move the needle in the moment, in the very moment when you're participating in something like this. Okay? My dad organized a No Kings today in our small, deep red town of Central Florida, had over 2,000 attendees. That's awesome. I went to an East Coast No Kings rally today, and to me, it looked like a great demonstration of the Popular Front. You had wine moms, Palestine activists, homeless advocates, PSL, DSA, and even RevComs all pushing towards the same goals.
Esque proposal to celebrate America's 250th birthday next year with a triumphal arch in Washington, D.C. Already being dubbed the Arc de Trump, Democrats have criticized the plans to build such a monument for America's quincentennial, supposedly a celebration of ditching an authoritarian king. Trump's denied the characterization of his leadership.
A king. This is more than a king. You know?
I feel like you have to have the memory of a goldfish to think this matters. I've seen this happen constantly, and it never leads to anything. I think saying that right now in 2025, when the entirety of the Western populations have actually dramatically swung in the opposite direction in the ways that they perceive Israel, is one of the dumbest times to say it. Because normally, you can craft an elaborate pessimistic narrative like this, because as I've said over and over again, that change takes so much time. Okay? All you can do sometimes is to put the best foot forward, one step in front of the next. But right now, we have seen dramatic shifts in public consciousness take place over the course of years, undermining decades of billion-dollar propaganda, undermining a sophisticated network of influence and mechanisms of control. And protests had a lot to do with that. You never know how many people you are actually shifting. You never know how many people whose minds you are changing. And not only that, but it's also a wonderful feeling. I'm done with this pessimism. I hate it. Even if change feels impossible, it is upon us to make sure that even if change seems impossible after doing all the right things, and I talked about this extensively with Black Lives Matter, Democrats didn't do shit. Democrats literally did nothing to address police brutality after all of those protests. People not only took it to the streets, But then they also sucked it up and voted for a decrepit old man by the name of Joe Biden, and nothing changed. This created a lot of nihilism for a lot of young people, for a lot of younger millennials and Gen Z. This was their first interaction with unjustifiable hierarchies that they wanted to change. They did everything by the book. They protested and they did their civic duty, and nothing changed. This played a major role in shifting people's consciousness. This played a major role in making people nihilistic, okay? But that nihilism makes it much easier for fascism to win. And even if it is going to win, inevitably, whether or not it will, and there is no guarantee that it will, you should never obey in advance. You should never concede in advance, and you should do everything you can to fight back against it. That's it. It's the best you can do. And I promise you, if you attend something like this, if you attend even the most libbed up protests like this, you will realize that there are people out there, normal people, that you never would have thought would agree with you, that share the same universal principles that you believe. Okay? As I always say, you cannot succumb to nihilism. You have to maintain revolutionary optimism. And the best possible way to do that is by showing up and experiencing solidarity in real time, in action. There is no better, more galvanizing feeling than doing that.
They're referring to me as a king. I'm not a king.
Right. Thousands poured into Times Square in Trump's home city of New York to disagree. Organizers say more than 5 million people turned up for their last protests in June, making it one of the biggest in US history. Even bigger crowds are expected today, prompting Republican governors in several states to place National Guard troops on standby. It's unclear how visible the military presence will be. Republican leadership has been trying to tarnish those turning out.
You're going to bring together the Marxists, the socialists, the Antifa advocates, the anarchists, and the pro-Hamas wing of the far-left Democrat Party. That is the modern Democratic Party. That's where they've gone.
Democratic leadership has struggled to recover from last year's bruising election loss. Their defeated candidate has been encouraging Americans to use their voices today.
I encourage everyone to get out there in peaceful protest of what is happening in our country and express our voice around the country we believe in. So get out there and join the No Kings event near you.
Leading Democrats like Senator Bernie Sanders are expected to address crowds over the coming hours. The question for the party is how can it use this movement to bolster its chances of taking back Congress at midterm elections next year to curtail Trump's regal tendencies.
Millions of people are expected to take part today. Organizers are saying that they expect it to be in the millions. 2,600 different events that they expect to be held as the day goes on today. You can see here outside the federal building, they've already got the fencing up. This fencing was not up several months ago. They think that this is going to be a repeat or a follow-up to what went on in June around the country. Now, groups organizing today's event say that they are in response to what they call an abuse of power by President Trump, including the immigration crackdown and attempts to send in troops in cities like LA, Portland, and Chicago. Outside of Chicago this week, a number of arrests have been made at an ICE building. Fence around that building was coming down. Judge ruled the fence had to be removed because it was a safety hazard there. Republicans are branding today's event as Hate America rallies and say the rallies contribute to the ongoing government shutdown. That shutdown now in day 18 today.
Yeah. Famously, Republicans love America. The only thing Republicans love about America are the billionaire, millionaire, capitalist oligarchs. Okay? Their legislation is entirely directed at improving those guys' lives and in many instances just their bottom lines. Okay? The idea that like Republicans love America while they fucking wipe their ass with the Constitution in an effort to advance this unholy cause of marginally improving shareholder value every single fucking quarter for an increasingly shrinking number of Americans and writing off the 99% and basically throwing them to the wolves that they have fed themselves, like ICE, like, federal law enforcement, is a funny take, I would say. If anything, these people are the ones who are trying to protect America. What America was supposed to be in theory, the land of freedom, the land of prosperity, They are trying to, they still have a firm commitment, and they're trying to abide by those principles.
Organizers say these rallies are being organized by regular people and volunteers, but a number of groups, including the ACLU, are helping to plan them. They say that they are expecting the crowds to be quite large today. Now, here in LA, there are worries about counter-protesters getting involved in the events today. Back in June, they were peaceful through the day, the No King's Day rallies that went on, and then they devolved into violence later on in the night. There is that concern. Police telling us no known credible threats. We're seeing some chatter online, but that they will be keeping an eye on today. Gio?
And we'll be watching these protests throughout the day on our streaming channel, ABC News Live. Alex Stone, thank you so much.
Of people expected to pack the streets across the country tomorrow for the latest No Kings protest. About 2,500 events are planned across all 50 states, with dozens scheduled right here in LA.
The protest comes amid what organizers call the Trump administration's push toward a dictatorship and the immigration crackdown in Democratic-led cities. Saturday's rallies expected to have a historic turnout. John Fanilio is live from downtown LA with more. John.
Yeah, I have the video for the DHS. Don't worry. I have it ready. It's one of the most insane things I've ever fucking seen. We'll talk about that too.
Andrew, that's right. The largest No Kings rally is expected to take place here in front of City Hall tomorrow afternoon. Organizers say it's meant to be a peaceful and principled demonstration in response to what they say are growing threats to democracy by the Trump administration.
Why are you guys
Critics,
doing this
though,
to me?
say the rallies are un-American, even as thousands are expected to attend. Nationwide.
There were over 2,700 events happening across the country as part of No Kings.
And in Los Angeles, thousands of people are expected to fill the streets Saturday for the second wave of No Kings rallies.
To protect our democracy from this administration, from Donald Trump, a wannabe king.
Hunter Dunn is an organizer with 5051 SoCal, a grassroots movement behind the No Kings coalition.
5051 stands for 50 states, 50 protests, one movement. It started right when the second Trump administration started to defend our democracy against executive overreach.
Back in June, thousands rallied after the Trump administration first launched aggressive ICE raids and deployed the National Guard. While mostly peaceful, a few rallies turned chaotic, leading to week-long protests. Mayor Bass eventually issued a curfew for a 1 square mile area of downtown LA.
We absolutely support and have to have peaceful protest, period. That is a part of our American way. And no one should engage in any type of vandalism, but the overwhelming majority of the protests have been peaceful.
If you participate, do so peacefully, do so thoughtfully, because there's one person that hopes you don't, that hopes there is disruption, there's some violence, and he will exploit that, and he will take advantage of that.
Organizers.
Low-key, he's not wrong, though. It's true. Obviously, the way that these things stay peaceful are entirely dependent on the police. And Gavin Newsom nor Karen Bass will ever admit to that, because the local law enforcement at these protests are working at the behest of the government, the state government here and the city government here. Having said that, however, in spite of the provocations from police, who do have a tendency to escalate, the real fear here is what Trump will do in an effort to light a match and douse this entire thing with gasoline. Because I do suspect that even the National Guard deployments that have been taking place all around the country are specifically done to they're specifically done to try to invoke some kind of response so that they can justify even further military action. One of the things that Donald Trump has done in an effort to, I guess, tamper with the protests that are taking place, I feel like, was the unique timing of the Marine base in California firing artillery over I-5, the interstate freeway. They basically told the state of California that they were going to do a live artillery fire over the interstate that connects San Diego and Los Angeles, that they were going to do this literally only a couple days ago, okay? It's called the 5, not I-5. Chatter. I'm speaking to people that don't just live in California.
Insist it's about civic action, not confrontation, despite outside agitators who critics have seized on to denounce all of the demonstrations.
We refer to it by its more accurate description, the Hate America rally, okay? And I'm not sure how anybody can refute that.
I mean, Donald Trump isn't acting like a king. Oh, hello, Joe Biden. I mean, where have they...
Listen, the very fact that there are millions of Barbaras, Deborahs, liberals from all different kinds of backgrounds that are taken to the goddamn streets proves that even the average American that normally has this servile predisposition towards authority and power has realized that this administration is behaving as a king. Trump is unique in the sense that he has actually pushed for the most radical, the lottery executive theory, and is behaving like an actual fucking madman, an actual mad king. In some ways, it's not all that different from previous administrations because it's a logical continuation of actions taken by previous executive offices. Having said that, given that it's arrived at its logical conclusion, it is unique in the sense that Donald Trump does behave exactly like a fucking king, so much so that the average American sees it.
Been for the last 4 years, these people are total hypocrites, and they're not interested in democracy.
First off, we're pro-democracy, and we're incredibly peaceful. I'm not a member of an organization called Antifa, because that organization doesn't exist. But I'm a proud anti-fascist. In Los Angeles, I know that we want to stand with Memphis, with Portland, with DC, with Chicago, with other cities, the way that they stood with us on June 14th. We need to stand with those cities, and no kings is one way to do that.
All right, and that rally here in front of City Hall, downtown Los Angeles, starting at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Find more information on our website, ktla.com. In downtown LA.
Would a king build a ballroom? The answer is yes.
For more, let's go ahead.
As a matter of fact, a king would do that. Would a king make it so that the court jesters are only kind to the king? No jesters are allowed if they ever hurt the king's feelings? Would a king decide that it is no longer allowed to say the king is bad? No king would do such a thing. He behaves as a petty tyrant in exactly the ways that you would expect like petty tyrants in throughout history would behave.
Bring in Robert Weissman, co-president of Public Citizen. That's a nonprofit community advocacy organization that's taking part in the protest. Robert, thank you so much for being here on ABC News Live. The No Kings website declares that the June protests accomplished what many claimed was impossible. That's a quote, mobilizing millions of people to peacefully, quote, declare with one voice that America has no kings. So why are you organizing again? Why now?
Well, I think we're going to be bigger this time, even than the 5 million last time. We anticipate the biggest protest in American history with people, as you saw on that map, in every state, in every congressional district, urban, suburban, rural, coming out to oppose Donald Trump's authoritarianism. People are worried about the illegal firings that are endangering our health and safety. People are worried about arbitrary efforts to cut off people's health care. People are upset about the illegal deployment of troops. People do not want to see masked agents abducting people from our streets, and on and on. And they're coming together peacefully, joyfully, but forcefully to say we are not an authoritarian country. We protect and defend our democracy by exercising our democratic rights, And we're going to do that today in historic numbers.
Robert, you know this. Republicans have been denouncing the protests. House Speaker Mike Johnson called them, quote, a hate rally, a hate America rally. What is your response to that?
These are Love America rallies, and Speaker Johnson may disagree with what we're saying, but he should be ashamed of what he said. He's trying to denounce the idea of protest. Protest makes us free. Protest makes America stronger. These protests for sure do, because of limiting the authoritarian has come from protest, including our independence. So we're tapping into the most American thing today, and Speaker Johnson should know that.
All right, Robert Weissman, thank you so much for joining us here. And again, we will.
All right, now let's hear what the real Americans are saying about these protests, okay? Prominent Democrats join No Kings protests. Republicans blast Hate America rally is the title from Fox and Friends, the weekend team. Okay? Now, obviously, the Republicans are not happy that there are fucking millions of people on the streets being like, you suck. Even if you weren't the administration, even if you didn't require a broad popular momentum that puts the wind in your sails of your administration, which obviously this government does require that. But even if you didn't require that, it would probably be shitty if people were getting together to be like, you suck. If people were protesting, they'd be like, you just suck, dude. I don't like anything that you're doing. It probably wouldn't feel too great. It's obviously even worse than that, considering that in a theoretical democracy like the one that we live in, you also need broad popular momentum. And Trump certainly does not have that. And these kinds of demonstrations actually embolden others to realize that Trump does not have that.
Meanwhile, it's like deja vu. Today, millions are expected to hit the streets in all 50 states as part of the anti-Trump No Kings protests.
This comes months after widespread demonstrations on the day of the Army's 250th anniversary parade.
Our own Madeline Rivera joins us from Washington with all of those details. Maddie, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Organizers say the first No Kings rally back in June drew about 5 million people at more than 2,000 rallies. They expect this weekend's demonstrations to have an even bigger turnout. They anticipate more than 2,500 protests across the country, about 450 more than were planned in June. A statement from the event's website.
I don't know why this chatter is arguing and saying what you're saying is not true. Okay, there is a difference in the way that ICE is operating under Trump versus Barack Obama. While the ICE operations under Barack Obama were still unacceptable, if you think that interior removals have not dramatically escalated under the Trump administration, you're not paying attention. Okay, it's two things can be true at the same time. I mean, Tom Homan was working in the Department of Homeland Security under Barack Obama. Barack Obama appointed Tom Homan to a position in the DHS and ICE. Okay? So just understand that, like, yeah, of course, Barack Obama was also directly responsible as a former president. Having said that, the directives coming from Trump 1 was very clear. Both the accelerated child separation policies as a mechanism of deterrent, and also the hyper-focus on interior removals under Trump 1 that have become the only practice that the DHS does now under Trump 2. That's different. That is different. Obama's role in this is that he accelerated this process. Obama's role in this is that he played a role in normalizing this process, okay, as Democrats previously have also voted to fund ICE even more, right? They've expanded ICE budgets. They've turned a blind eye to the unconstitutional nature of Customs and Border Patrol operations and what the ACLU has declared to be constitution-free zones, 100 miles surrounding an airport or a regular boundary or the coastline of the United States of America where 70% of Americans live, right? Democrats have never actually chosen to deal with this problem and therefore have only made it worse, or in some instances, they've actually normalized this kind of violent apprehension and this kind of behavior. They funded it. Having said that, Donald Trump is taking advantage of this and greatly expanding what was previously thought to be a truly brutal process. I do find it really funny that Fox News' own Fox News' graphic on the screen, which comes from nokings.org instead of Gulf of America. That's a funny little moment here.
Site states since June, President Trump has doubled down. His administration is sending masked agents into our streets, terrorizing our communities. They are targeting immigrant families, profiling, arresting, and detaining people without warrants. Several Democrats are expected to participate, including Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, Connecticut Senators Chris Murphy and Richard Blumenthal, Boston Mayor Michelle Wu, DNC Chair Ken Martin, among others. House Speaker Mike Johnson is slamming the event and Democrats for taking part.
The Democrat leaders are going to join for a big party out on the National Mall. They're going to descend on our Capitol for their much anticipated so-called No Kings rally. We refer to it by its more accurate description, the Hate America rally. You're going to bring together the Marxists, the socialists, the Antifa advocates, the anarchists, and the pro-Hamas wing of the far-left Democrat Party. That is the modern Democratic Party.
But independent Senator Bernie Sanders says the rally is meant to do the opposite, like upholding the values of the Constitution and pushing back against what they say is authoritarianism.
No, Speaker Johnson, the No Kings rally on October 18th is not a Hate America rally. In fact, it's quite the contrary. It's a Love America rally.
It's pretty funny. They are cooking, man. They're really cooking with this whole "these guys hate America" shit.
Meantime, President Trump tells Maria Bartiromo on an exclusive interview on Sunday Morning Futures he's not a king.
Mr. President, do you think that the government shutdown is all about this rally that's happening this weekend, the No Kings rally?
No, I mean, some people say they want to delay it for a king. This is
more
not a
than
king. You know, they're referring to me as a king. I'm not a king.
Right.
Schumer is urging protesters.
Oh, if he says so, that's fine then. It's fine, man. If he said so, then it's the truth. What do you mean? I wish, I guess all of the other times that he has lied and then did the exact opposite of the thing that he was claiming is also not something that we should factor in at all into our assessment, assessment of the performance of the president, right? Like when he said, I don't know what Project 2025 is. I've never heard of it. I don't even know how to read. How could I have read this big document? And then now, 9 months in, 10 months in, he's like, oh, it's awesome. I love Project 2025. Suck my dick. I'm doing Project 2025 right now. Oh, the government is shut down. We're going to bring in the Reaper, Russ Vought, architect of Project 2025. At a certain point, you just got to look at the actions of the administration rather than what the man himself is saying, right? Especially when he has betrayed your confidence over and over again.
To march peacefully. Most of the demonstrations at the first No Kings rally in June were peaceful, but a handful did erupt into violence, leading to several arrests. Charlie, Rachel, and Griff.
Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you, Maddie.
They were mostly peaceful.
Yeah, right.
I'm Steve Doocy.
Right. Yeah, right. Thank God for the real patriots, dude. Thank God. Thank God the real patriots are out here. No Kings protest organizer argues Trump has an authoritarian agenda. Thank God for the Will Cain show and the rest of Fox News to tell us how real Americans are feeling, okay?
Back day 17 of the government shutdown, and House Speaker Mike Johnson.
By the way, remember, January 6th, just another day. Bunch of tourists that wanted to see the inside of the Capitol. Totally normal, okay? Not an insurrection. And if it was an insurrection, it was actually done by Antifa. Even though the people that did the insurrection were prosecuted and put in jail, and they were Antifa, but then the president, in his endless, magnanimous nature, the magnanimous nature of our God, Emperor, King, decided that those Antifa had to be released back in the public. But it wasn't an insurrection. And even if it was an insurrection, it was done by patriots that deserve to be free. Okay? Even though those patriots were actually Antifa. But they still deserve to be free. Now, having said that, No Kings protests comprise entirely of Barbara's and Deborah's, okay? That are just like taking to the streets, writing funny little signs on their placards and expressing their anger and resentment towards all of the awful things that this administration is doing. That actually is insurrection. That's peak insurrection. Wine moms are actually Hamas. They are actually un-American. And how dare they criticize the Republican Party? That's the least American thing you can do.
Is frustrated.
I feel like on a day like this at the end of another long week, I just feel like we ought to apologize. I hate that we have to do this. I don't want to be here any more than you do talking about this subject. It is so difficult to be a happy warrior when you know that so many millions of American people are suffering, being made to suffer unnecessarily because of the Democrats' political games.
Budget Director Russ Vought saying this afternoon more cuts are coming due to the shutdown. He says the Democrats have helped drain cash from the Army Corps of Engineers, and he says they now will be pausing over $11 billion in projects in New York, San Francisco, Boston. And
not a king, by the way. This is not, this is not petty tyrant behavior, okay? Remember, you have to take Trump for his word. I mean, he's a man of his word. Famously, he said he doesn't know who Russ Vought is. He doesn't know what Project 2025 is. Remember, he said that over and over again at his rallies. Like, I don't even know how to read. Oh, wait, what the fuck? That's the guy. Wait a minute. That's the architect of Project 2025. Now literally utilizing the government shutdown to stop the funding of infrastructure projects that were previously allocated to, hold on, New York, San Francisco, Boston, and Baltimore. Blue cities? That's just a simple coincidence, right? That's got to be a coincidence. That's not king behavior. That's not petty tyrant behavior. No shot, right? Come on.
In Baltimore. And while the money, at least for now, isn't going out, we've got a record amount coming in from President Trump's tariffs. Let's take a look at the numbers over at the wall.
It is pretty funny because, like, while liberals are like no kings, while they're doing the no kings rallies, I suspect the reactionary forces in this country will turn around and be like, no, yes, kings. We want Trump to be a king. Thank you for saying it. Thank you for naming exactly what Trump is so that we can feel a lot more confident, openly expressing our desire for Trump to be the king, the daddy, you know? Fun fact, the Boston Tea Party was a protest against the tariff. Some of the more eclectic protest signs I've seen so far: Bad Bunny for president, no kings, yes queens, Stephen Miller, a rectal polyp, resist mango, Mussolini, Trump is bananas. Like, these are wine moms, man. These are wine moms. And you don't know the full extent. Okay? You don't know what their actual point of view looks like. Just, they're libbed up for sure. But just understand, wait, what? He posted that, by the way, on his True Social. I'm getting a lot of mixed signals here. I'm not going to lie. I'm getting a lot of mixed signals here. This is strange. Oh, look, man, I know it's a fucking cliche. I know it's a goddamn cliche to say, imagine if Obama did this, or imagine if Biden did this. But god damn it, dude. Republicans would assassinate them. Republicans tried to assassinate them regardless. Out of fear that this is what they wanted to do when they did not show anything of the sort. Ay, ay, ay. Anyway, NYPD statement on the protest. The majority of the No Kings protests have dispersed at this time and all the traffic closures have been lifted. We had more than 100,000 people all across 5 boroughs peacefully exercising their First Amendment right, and the NYPD made 0 protest-related arrests. It's a dark day for the metal genre. I mean, these guys ruin everything that they touch, okay? NYPD is Hamas, by the way. NYPD is Hamas, question mark. By the way, there is something to be said about this being hailed as a major dub for the Trump administration, because this is literally taxpayers. Okay, this is extra taxes that they collected in the form of tariffs that the companies that are tasked with like import and export were the ones who actually paid for it and then added that on to the cost. So technically, it still came out of your pockets.
The Treasury Department says that for tariff revenue last month, $1 billion. That's a record high and up nearly.
It is truly shocking to see. Dogs seems to be roaming around a lot these days is such a funny comment, dude. Or maybe because you're actually watching me for the first time and are paying attention to it and didn't realize that that was always the fucking case. It is not my fault that you didn't know how this works. It's not my fault that you watch like one fucking day's worth of like Kaya laying in bed and sleeping for 5 hours and then assume that this is actually an indication that I don't let her roam around and I actually am torturing her and stopping her from like drinking water or moving her legs or repositioning. Free Carla. Yeah. Sorry, brother. I made up my mind off of a clip compilation I saw on Twitter, and now I'm here at the source, recognizing that maybe those clip compilations were wrong. But instead of realizing that those clip compilations were wrong, I have to make up an alternative. This notion that actually things have changed as a consequence of me yelling. That's the funniest part about it. These guys like presented a narrative that was wrong and then kept fucking celebrating themselves for leaning into this narrative that was wrong, only to then come in here, and be like, oh shit, where's Carla? Where's your dog? Oh, she's not there. Must be because we fucking called you out. It's like, no, because that's just how it always has been. This should be your moment to go. This should be your moment to go, perhaps I was wrong. It's not your moment to go, I was right, and things have changed now. Fiona's here as well.
100% over the same time last year. Overall, customs revenue for fiscal year 2025 also hitting a record high with over $200 billion collected. Now, all that is helping the government see a surplus last month of nearly $200 billion. It's the highest September on record. And President Trump is talking about tariffs. He did so earlier today.
I used to watch in amazement at how stupid our country was, how stupid they were. And we're not stupid anymore. If we didn't have tariffs, we would have no national security.
Trump has often touted the power of tariffs in many conflicts. Just this week, President Trump brokered a deal in the Middle East, and while the ink is barely dry, the left is taking to streets tomorrow to protest the president. It's a second round of No Kings demonstrations planned across the country. You'll remember those from this summer. So why are they doing this? And just days after President Trump's ceasefire in Gaza. Joining us now to answer that question is one of the organizers of the protest, co-president of Public Citizen, Robert Weissman. Robert, thank you for being with us here today to try to shed some light on what is driving you to the streets tomorrow. And I have seen some of your videos, I've seen some of your speeches at previous rallies. So I ask you pleasantly, without a full stump speech, why? Why are you protesting President Trump?
Sir, why are you protesting our big, beautiful president when he's so awesome and everyone can see that he's awesome? This is confusing. What are you doing?
Suggesting he wants to be king.
Well, I'll pleasantly reply, and it's great to be with you, Will. We're worried about a president who is displaying an authoritarian agenda and carrying it forward. We're worried about a president who's deploying National Guard troops on our streets for no reason. We're worried about a president who's illegally shutting down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau that protects consumers from financial fraudsters and ripoffs. We're worried about a president who's illegally firing employees and taking advantage of the shutdown to weaken our public health by dismissing people from the Center for Disease Control. And we're worried about a lot more, but I'll take to heart your request not to give you a stump speech and pause right there.
Yeah, I'd love to walk through a few of those with you. You see those as the move of an authoritarian government. Let's start with the National Guard. The National Guard has been deployed to several cities to do two things. One, to stop the demonstration against ICE and federal officers looking to enforce our immigration laws, to enforce deportations. Now, deportations is something we've seen from almost every administration. In fact, over 3 million deportations under President Obama. Would you call actions authoritarian and that of a king?
Well, I think President Obama's deportation policy was disgraceful. But what we're talking about here is the deployment of the National Guard, as you say, against protesters or on fake claims of rising crime, when in fact crime is going down. I think the purpose of the National Guard deployments is to intimidate people from exercising their First Amendment rights. And the governor of Oklahoma agrees.
to be clear, and I was being charitable by calling what the National Guard is doing addressing protesters. I imagine you'll be out in the streets tomorrow, and if you remain peaceful, you won't see any of the National Guard. But if you behave the same way they have in Portland, and that is you attack ICE officers or you destroy property, specifically and especially federal property, then you should, and you will see the National Guard. And there will be a positive outlook, perhaps not for you and your freedom, but for the rest of us who see that as a disgrace to civil society.
Well, when there is civil unrest, normally the police are called in, and if the police can't handle it in extreme situations, the governor might invoke the National Guard. To take Portland, for example, that's not happening. According to the federal government itself, what was happening in Portland when the president deployed the National Guard was minimal. The National Guard was there based on no protest whatsoever.
Robert,
the local authorities were clear. If there was any problem, they were ready to handle it. So
surely you agree
I don't think the National Guard was deployed to deal with objective problems.
Do you think it's an objective problem when ICE officers are the targets of assassination, for example, in Dallas, Texas?
No one should be assassinated.
Yeah, I don't think he's gonna fucking disagree with that. It's just that has nothing to do with this. Okay?
And our movement is a profoundly nonviolent movement. And that's what you're going to see on the streets tomorrow from the No King, with the No Kings protest.
And I appreciate that.
But there is a problem. There is a problem of violence.
I do want to say this. I
I
appreciate you saying that. I appreciate that both.
Yeah, I don't think they just.
You condemn violence, which, by the way, is a bit. I'm not going to call it a rarity, but it is a declining proposition on the left. We've seen the polls where many on the left see political violence as a legitimate outlet of pushing back on something they believe, like you, is an authoritarian regime. So it's big that you suggest it's not appropriate. And you also will not have it tomorrow in your protest, your No King protest. But don't you think that by saying President Trump is an authoritarian, by saying that, you're making people believe that their lives are actually at risk? In fact, by that rhetoric, aren't you legitimizing those, even if they're crazy? You're giving them the legitimacy.
Guys, you can't say Trump is bad. You can't express any sort of discontent towards the administration, because what if someone decides to be violent? I guess you can't do anything. I mean, what? That's I mean, this is unironically what these people have been trying to design, okay? Where the issue here is Trump's unpopularity, and they can't contend with that. So they're like looking for a way. They are looking desperately for any way to try and make it illegal to say you are bad, that Trump is bad, especially when he is objectively bad. This is why I've been saying liberals are kind of oblivious to how bad things could potentially get. Okay? Like, this is not just about radical elements within the protests or whatever. This is just like straightforwardly about stamping out any sort of dissent.
To turn to violence?
No, unfortunately, we're describing the reality that we're dealing with in our lives. You want to talk about threats to lives, Will? The Medicaid cuts that were forced in the reconciliation bill will cost 50,000 lives a year. It's well documented by academic experts. So
if you think public policy, policy and cutting government spending is real violence, you and I have very different definitions of violence. And Robert,
first of all, ICE is violent. Sending the military to Democrat-run cities is violent. Okay, sicking ICE on your neighbors is violent. But yes, objectively, cutting necessary expenditures for social safety nets that allow people to survive, barely make ends meet, is violent, because the outcome of that is that people don't get health care, for example. When you cut 16 million people's access to Medicaid so that your billionaire friends can keep their fucking fat tax cuts, that is going to have an incredibly violent outcome. 16 million people are not going to be able to pay for their health care. And if they can't pay for their health care, what do you think happens? They die. They die. When they need health care and they can't pay for it, they just say, what are you going to do? I guess I'll fucking die. And many people do, as a matter of fact, 50,000 people a year. according to Kaiser family estimates. So how is that not objectively violent? And it's really funny because these are the same guys on the right that say taxation is violent. Because when it comes to understanding systematic forms of violence, they literally say the IRS is a violent state enterprise. They literally openly say it. They'll be like, oh, taxes? What happens when you don't pay your taxes? Well, the government comes and arrests you. That's what. Because taxes and taxation is enforced by the state's monopoly of violence at the end of the day. Unless it's tariffs, of course. Then it's the best kind of tax. No one has ever seen such beautiful taxes in the form of tariffs. That's the most beautiful way. Tariff is the most beautiful word in the English language.
I think that you have a real long look in the mirror that's required, that if you continue to call a politician you oppose, that's fine. I don't begrudge you your disagreement. But you continue to call a politician you oppose a would-be king and authoritarian. I don't know if you personally have used the word fascist, but it's not a long lead. That people will take up violence.
You heard me flatly condemn violence. And our movement, it's not just that it's going to be peaceful tomorrow. Nonviolence is a core principle of what we're doing. That said, you easily could have played Mike Johnson and a series of other Republican leaders calling us Antifa, saying, which now, according to Stephen Miller, is equivalent to being a domestic terrorist. So we're actually being called domestic terrorists for protesting on the street peacefully.
If words are violence, I wonder which words are more violent. When it's a bunch of people saying this administration is doing fucked up things, or if it's when the administration doing the fucked up things turning around and saying, if you express any discontent with me, you're I was going to say fascist, you're a terrorist and we have to violently apprehend you. I wonder if words are violence across the board, I wonder which of these words are more violent. It just makes no sense. It's so stupid.
No. Yeah, I mean, Stephen Miller's called you, Robert Weissman, Antifa.
The millions and millions of people.
Like, words are violence, and that's why when the administration says the military must be deployed against domestic enemies that we have declared domestic threats, domestic terrorists, and that they need to go full force, which I don't know what that means, but I have some ideas on what that could mean. Full force.
We're going to peacefully protest as part of No Kings tomorrow.
Well,
have been labeled domestic terrorists.
There is Antifa.
If you're worried about,
if
you're worried about name calling, my friend,
exists.
And
if you're not
Republican
Antifa,
Party to see
good.
where it's coming from.
If you're not Antifa, good. I don't know if anybody's called you Antifa, but there is Antifa. And if Antifa is at your rallies tomorrow, I would say you might see.
There is no organization in the United States.
We're not going to live in Neverland. We're not going to live in Neverland.
Yes, there is. Yes, there is. It exists in my heart and in my mind. It exists. I promise. It's real.
Here. And if Antifa's there tomorrow, I'm sorry, you should and will see the National Guard. If you're peaceful as you suggest, then we will listen to what you have to say.
You're going to see millions of people at the largest peaceful demonstration in American history.
Robert,
and I hope you come join us, my friend.
I won't be there, but I'll be paying attention. I promise I'll be paying attention, Robert. Thank you for your time.
Hey, it's Will Kane. Click here to subscribe.
Depending on who you ask, it is the eve of freedom or the eve of terror. Just hours from now, thousands upon thousands will gather in the streets for the nationwide No Kings protests. Organizers say that they're speaking out against Donald Trump and his abuse of power. Republicans are framing it quite differently.
We're going to bring together the Marxists, the socialists, the Antifa advocates, the anarchists, and the pro-Hamas wing of the far-left Democrat Party. That is the modern Democratic Party. That's where they've gone. And the Hate America rally is the common theme among all those groups.
Now, these protests come at an interesting time. The government is still shut down 3 weeks now. Both sides aren't even talking, and now top Democrats are going after Caroline Leavitt for some extreme accusations that she leveled against the party's base.
The Democrat Party's main constituency are made up of Hamas terrorists, illegal aliens, and violent criminals. That is who the Democrat Party is catering to. They don't stand for anything except for catering to their far-left base, which, as I said, includes anti-Semites, includes Hamas terrorists, illegal aliens, and violent criminals who they want to let off freely to roam in American streets.
Caroline Leavitt is a complete and total disgrace. She continues to embarrass herself. It gets worse every time she opens her mouth. She's lying about something. And of course she's lying about the patriotic Americans who are going to exercise their First Amendment rights to petition the government and express themselves and gather in a peaceful assembly.
Now, Ashley, I don't know why Republicans are so exercised about this protest tomorrow compared to the last time that it was happening. But could it be the sense that there is more?
By the way, a lot of conversations are currently being had about how words are violence, mostly coming from the Republican Party. And last time the No Kings protest took place, I remember there was a guy who was a far-right Trump supporter and a televangelist who owns a private security force that actually on the day of the No Kings protest went to Minnesota state legislature lawmakers' homes from the Democratic Party and assassinated them and tried to assassinate even more. And Republicans just simply said that actually is a left-wing violent incident, and they moved on. Wait, what? Dude, for legit, the last 10 years, the people who screamed that words are violent have been the leftist trans gang? What? Chatter. I need you to understand something. Words that accompany systemic violence, words that demand systemic violence, are violent. Okay? Like, for example, when you say we need to eradicate trans people, that's something that everyone understands is objectively violent sentiment. Okay? Because trans people exist. They're here whether you like it or not. It's a real thing. It's not an ideology. It's not a difference of opinion that can change. It's just a thing that exists, okay? And especially at a time when the state is already taking the initiative to do that, to eradicate trans people by making it so that they can't get access to medical care, for example, then yes, that is a demand from the administration to do more of the things that it's doing, as opposed to people saying, stop that, okay? I'm using the trans issue because you brought, leftist trans gang, okay? But it is objectively funny that the state, which also controls all of the capacity to do violence, is now saying anyone that criticizes us is actually engaging in the same words or violence rhetoric that you have attributed to the left. Okay? Do you understand? You don't understand anything. You weren't even listening to me. You were your tongue was sticking out, and you were one finger typing back to another person in the chat.
More momentum this time around than there was the last time. I mean, what's your sense of how much energy there is and how many people we might see tomorrow?
I think there's going to be millions of Americans and people protesting tomorrow to protect our democracy. I think that the reason why Republicans are paying attention now is because the last time the No Kings protest took place, it was on Donald Trump's birthday, and he thought millions of people were going to show up for that. They showed up for protests that day. And so now he's like, maybe I'm not as popular as I think. But for Republicans, what I would argue is that you should want millions of people to go out into the streets. You should want millions of people to be able to peacefully protest, because that is the perfect counterpoint you can say to me when I say I think our democracy is under attack with authoritarian regimes. What you shouldn't do is call us Marxists or socialists, or you can be whatever you want in America. That's the beauty of a democracy. And I swear, I really do. I thought a couple weeks ago we said we were going to take the temperature down. Protesting peacefully in the street is taking the temperature down. Calling people Hamas sympathizers, socialists, all the other terrible things they've said, that is not what that does.
Yeah, whatever happened to that, Lance?
Who are the sponsors
The idea,
of this?
whatever happened to the fact that literally just a few weeks ago, the idea was, let's take the temperature down. Let's not call each other these things that make this seem like some kind of existential struggle. What happened to that?
Who are the sponsors of this event tomorrow? Let's say Indivisible. The leading defund.
Indivisible, the leading Antifa coalition, Indivisible. I'm sorry, man. I just don't think you can get average people to look at a bunch of Barbaras and Deborahs that are taken to the fucking streets to be like, Trump, stop behaving like a fucking petty tyrant, and then get normies on board with this narrative crafting that you're engaging in, where you're like, no, those Barbaras and Deborahs are actually Antifa terrorists. They're Hamas. Okay? If anything, it's going to make people look at the things that you're claiming are bad in a different way. They're gonna be like, okay, well, I guess they are Hamas, and that's not bad. I don't know what to do here. It's mostly older folks that are out in the fucking streets, man. They're the ones who are like the most pissed off. They're the ones who are at least the most excited to express their discontent.
The police organization in this country. Jewish Voice.
Individual is not the leading defund of police. That is like
100%
factually
are.
incorrect.
They were for years to defund the police.
No, they weren't. That's
Jewish
wrong.
Voice for Peace is a Hamas sympathetic group. They prowl around.
Like, this is what I mean. This is CNN, by the way. God damn, where do they find these fucking dipshits, dude? Holy shit. That is craziness, brother. That is actually crazy. These are Jewish Voice for Peace is Hamas. It's definitely skewed older, but there were a lot more young people and people of color today than there were the last time. Good. Great. CNN platforming hallucination because owner is pro-Trump.
Students for Justice for Palestine, another Hamas-funded organization.
They're not the lead
These are the
protesters.
organizations. George Soros-funded organizations. They're the most...
First of all, this is not the appropriate response. When he says Jewish Voice for Peace and Students for Justice for Palestine are Hamas funded, your argument, your counter shouldn't be they're not actually funding the protests. Your argument should be, what the fuck are you saying? Your argument should be, you're an insane person who is hallucinating an alternative reality. Okay? Because these are not bad organizations at all. They are on the right side of history. That much is clear. And they actually channel the same anger odd majorities of the American public also feel towards Israel. So no matter how hard these guys try to like sully their reputations and try to make them out to be like scary, dangerous, and prosecutable, it's not going to fucking work.
Radical
So
left-wing
wait,
groups that are
so are you
sponsoring it.
arguing that those organizations are single-handedly going to bring millions of people in the streets? We're talking 2,500 different plans and events for protests. I mean, is that the argument here? And the second part of the argument, my question to you is, are you arguing that if groups are funding protests that they shouldn't be allowed to happen?
100. Anybody can go protest. No, absolutely not. Anybody can go protest what they want. But you played clips of members of Congress talking about this event. I think it is worth noting who is sponsoring this event. Defund the police type people, Hamas sympathizers. That's what these groups stand for.
And not to mention the Communist Party it's on the poster here in New York City.
Thank you.
I mean, you've got boomer cranks. They've been protesting every day. Cranky commies, Antifa people. I mean, what they're saying is true. A lot of the people with these sympathies are going to be at these events. I'm sure there'll be some peaceful protesters there. I hope there's no violence. But given what we've seen in cities around America, it is highly likely we're going to see violent elements.
I would like to say that I want to get to the press secretary's comments about the base of the party. I've voted in every Democratic primary since I was old enough to vote. I'm considered the base of the party. I was a union member. I grew up in a trailer house in East Texas. I went home last weekend, and I took my wife home to East Texas, and I went to a Baptist church where I was saved and baptized. I'm the base of the football game. Where I was an all-state football player, I'm the base of the party. And then I went by the factory that had been shut down because my job was moved overseas. I'm the base of the Democratic Party, not these other folks.
Andy Kim, the senator, compared Speaker Johnson's comments about these protests to what was said about the March on Washington of 1963 by George Wallace. He said, segregationist George Wallace said about the March on Washington, I do think the march under the leadership of men who are in the Communist Party and have been is not good for the country. Citizens being used by communists to disrupt and destroy internal peace. That's the comparison that he's making.
Well, look, I mean, if Democrats want to embrace having the Communist Party here in New York City sponsor this rally, be my guest, respectfully, and I hear what you're saying, but where is the energy in the Democratic Party? You see energy around protecting illegal populations. You see it every day. Energy around criminals, violent criminals. I mean, Democratic officials all over this country have worked very hard to let violent criminals out on the streets. Where is the lie in what is being said by Caroline Leavitt? This is where the energy is on the left.
The energy,
violent, illegal aliens, violent criminals. That's the energy. That's what you see.
The energy is behind protecting people's rights. It's behind not having citizens citizens, Americans.
What about illegal aliens being rounded up by
many
ICE?
Democrats have said we got the immigration issue wrong and we need to fix it. Perhaps.
Boo. At a time when millions of people are fucking out in the streets, and a big chunk of that resentment that they're expressing stems from ICE rounding up people and putting them in fucking concentration camps. To say that like the Democrats got the immigration issue wrong is ridiculous. They got it wrong because they went right wing with it. I really hope that's what she means. I hope that that is what she means. She means that the Democrats got the immigration issue wrong by leaning into the right-wing narrative surrounding immigration, right? That's what I suspect she's going to say, right? Come on, right? Right? I hope.
Maybe in Congress, but we know that won't happen because they aren't even working right now. But people are protesting Americans being zip-tied, being detained without having their rights protected. I'm not saying that is not that is not the Democratic Party saying that let all illegal people or criminals run free. That is not what the Democratic Party.
Oh, God. This is inconsistent. This is not a strong retaliation to Scott Jennings's lies. Okay? God damn, bro. It's like, oh, I just don't get it. I don't understand. I don't know why liberals have such a hard time with this. Okay? The only thing that the Democrats got wrong on immigration is that they leaned into the right-wing sentiment, okay? When that sentiment was built around this collective hysteria, manufactured outrage, built on top of falsehoods about undocumented migrants being responsible for crimes, heinous crimes, and that the previous administration was simply not apprehending or prosecuting criminals. I think it's a big L that CNN hosts these panels and the two Republicans, or sometimes three Republicans, consistently dominate the narrative on these panels. I feel like this has a very negative consequence on the way Democrats approach these issues, the way Democrats learn about these issues, the way Democrats talk about these issues. It's not good at all.
Those are the policies. Those are your.
No, they are not.
I mean, you have prosecutors and judges all over this.
You support an imperialist running for Maine? Yes, brother. Yes. Yes, I love imperialism. I have betrayed the revolution. I love imperialism. It's my favorite thing, okay? I love it. Please, lock in.
Country that have let violent...
I'm also literally going to and promoting a liberal protest, right? The No Kings protest. You and the 8 other Maoist third worldists in your reading group are the only real revolutionary vanguard, okay? I am a sheepdog. I am a sheepdog for the Democratic Party. I want to cut away the revolutionary fervor that is trapped in the collective consciousness of the American proletariat. Okay? If only people heard you and 5 of your stinkiest friends from your reading group and their attitude, they would automatically be on board. Classic. They're going to clip that law? I don't care.
Criminal after violent criminal out on the streets. And then what do? They commit other violent crimes in city after city after city.
What does that have to do with people exercising their rights to protest?
I
really want to understand. I mean, there are going to be millions of people probably out on the streets all over the country. And
they're sowing infighting within opposition and also justifying future police military violence on the protest. They want the Debras to be angry about the socialists in their ranks than the actual tyrant. Also, wasn't that bald cowboy motherfucker a Bernie consultant for Latino people? This is worked on Turkish opposition. Democrats cannot allow the admin to marginalize the components of the opposition. Yes, that's Chuck Rocha. He's pretty good. I like him.
Many of those people are, your neighbors, perhaps some of your friends. That have constitutional rights, that have voting rights like everybody else. Why is it that there is this idea that guilt by association should be applied to them when they just want to...
One thing I remind baby leftists a lot is the part in If We Burn where Vincent Bevins is recounting a story about the failure of the left elements to control the Euromaidan. They were asked if they could pull together 99 other leftists. They couldn't during those violent times, so the conservatives won the Maidan. I don't know the exact details of that, so I can't speak on that directly. But I will say that left opposition to other left elements that have a different mechanism for change or a different method for change, instead of realizing that we have to take advantage of all of this growing discontent and try to shape it into a more productive movement that has decipherable, discernible policy goals. Instead of doing that, we just fucking hyper-focus on marginal critique of different ideological tendencies that are utterly irrelevant in the grand scheme of things in contemporary American politics. We will never be able to build anything. Okay? That's it. But the left will continue to engage in infighting. And the left will continue to present some semblance of false moral purity as being like a leftist deity. Jesus Christ could come back to earth and present himself as like the singular force for communism, and people would still find something to shit on him over on the left. Okay, they'd be like, yeah, turning water into wine. Why isn't he fighting the opposition? Why is he curing the lepers instead of fighting the opposition? How dare he? Puh, spending all of his time walking on water. These miracles are silly. He should be doing mutual aid. White savior much? Yeah, someone in the chat said Nepo baby. Yeah, Jesus Christ was a Nepo baby. Shit, was Jesus Christ also in Blackwater? You do understand that I'm not even talking about fucking Graham Plattner at this point, right? I'm talking about like everything. I'm talking about something broader that is a issue within the left. Why do you do this cynical framework of dissent? And why is it always someone who's been in this community for a very long time? This is more so the most unproductive elements and the worst possible tendencies that leftists regularly engage in, and unironically present as a virtue, constantly looking for a reason to assume that like someone is bad, immoral, wrong, like this cynicism that so many people who claim to be progressive have in their hearts. And also this firm and committed belief, this firm commitment to the notion that no one is actually capable of change at all is ridiculous. And not only is it ridiculous, but it is utterly unproductive. It makes instilling a sense of solidarity impossible. And it makes organizing impossible as well. All right. How is the best Americans can elect for the leftish a Blackwater mercenary? I'm not saying he's going to lead the fucking Revolutionary Vanguard. Okay? But if your immediate position is like, I don't give a fuck about anything a person is saying or who they could have potentially become throughout their evolution because of what they've done, you're not being serious about this, because we do need motherfuckers who are veterans on our side. And there are veterans on our side. So many of them in this community. Okay. Also, many of you don't even know how to fucking hold a gun. So shut the fuck up. For all of his faults, I believe Freud accurately described this as the narcissism of small differences.
Go out and protest against a political administration that they disagree with.
I have no problem with people protesting peacefully. They have every right to do that. I do think it's legitimate.
Why demonize them?
Because I think it's a legitimate political debate about what they're protesting for.
I mean, look, listen, if every time, I mean, and this does happen on the right, on the left to some extent, conservatives get mad when Democrats say, oh, you guys are palling around with white supremacists and racists and so on and so forth. Charlottesville, a great example.
Or the group chat.
Yeah, the group chat.
This week.
January 6th, all of that. Everybody painted with the same brush, and you all were.
At the No Kings, I overheard 60-year-olds talking about how we need to arm militia to resist ICE. They flew Palestinian flags, called for free healthcare, and demanded the end of billionaires. These aren't young lefties. This is liberal honor guard. What does this mean for the Dems' 26-28 primaries when this is where their core liberal base is now? That's an anecdote, but it is reflective of of the attitude that we can see on polls about the discontent that the base of support for the Democratic Party has for their politicians, for their elected representatives. This is something that I have noticed, and it's actually been more radical than I even foresaw. Grantifa, Grandpops Against Fascism. I think the average liberal is far more radical than the average establishment Democrat. The average liberal of every age group has become far more radicalized in this last year especially. And I think they have more tolerance for a different alternative to what the Democratic Party is representing than even the left is for some weird reason. We can't have a my way or the highway approach in this situation especially when there's no alternatives. Okay? In the absence of alternatives, you can't be getting outflanked by Grantifa. That's it.
Opposed and upset about that. Why are you applying then that same thing in this situation?
Again, if they want to protest peacefully, that's perfectly fine. It is perfectly legitimate political debate for Republicans to say, what exactly are they protesting? They are mad that Donald Trump is enforcing federal immigration law. They are mad that he is lawfully exercising the powers of the presidency. And they are fighting for policies that Republicans fundamentally believe are bad
I
for
do
the
think
country.
they disagree with all of the things that
It's a legit debate.
They disagree. You characterize those things as lawful, and they disagree, and they're expressing their disagreement. But I want to play this from Amy Coney Barrett, the Supreme Court Justice. She's spoken with a New York Times columnist about some of these concerns about President Trump's use of his presidential power. Her answer on the Supreme Court's role in all of this, you might find surprising.
Where it's very easy to imagine from either the left or the right, some present or future president deciding to test the court, Andrew Jackson style, saying, interesting ruling, Justice Barrett, good luck enforcing it. If a president defied the Supreme Court, what would you do?
Well, as you say, the court lacks the power of the purse. We lack the power of the sword. And so we interpret the Constitution, we draw in precedents, we have these questions of structure, and, we make the most with the tools that we have.
I watched that today when we sent it around, and I had not seen it previously. And it's funny that we picked this piece because it was the part that stuck out to me the most, and it kind of shook me. She was like, we ain't in charge of the money. We ain't in charge of having a sword. She used the word sword, and then she was like, I don't know what they could be doing because we just do the Constitution. That's what we do, and kind of just pivoted. And I was like, oh, my God.